Hello art beaters, Becky here for artbeads.com, and I've got a brand new video for you today. We've had a lot of requests for a video tutorial on how to make our Autumn Dance Bracelet, which is a wider version of this technique. So I thought I would show you how to make our Autumn Dance Bracelet with bar beads and 11/0 round seed beads. For this design, all you'll need are the Checkmates 2-hole bar beads. I have this wonderful matte metallic antique copper color. The original design uses this lovely kind of metallic mix of colors, so all these colors come in one tube. That's lovely. Thought I'd make a little color variation for you today. I'm also using 11/0 round seed beads, and this is an opaque rainbow turquoise AB color from Toho. Love that. I've also got some beading thread. I'm using Toho 1G, using a darker color so you can see it on camera, but feel free to match the color to the beads you're using. And I also have a beading needle. Size 12 is my favorite. And yes, my beading needle is very bent because I use it a lot and manipulate it a lot. And it's okay if your beading needle is bent like mine. One other thing you'll need is a clasp of your choosing. I grabbed this fun little toggle clasp. You can choose any clasp, really. I used a trigger clasp on my variation here. So feel free to pick the clasp you like the most. To get started, I'm going to take some thread off the spool here. I like to work with about 1 yard. That's a nice, comfortable length to work with. So we're going to do that. That's about an arm span length. So I like to stretch out my arm, see how long that is, and kind of cut there. And then we're going to add our needle to our thread. Success on the first go. Wow, I've gotten really good at that. All right. So first up, we're going to add a seed bead, and then we're going to add a bar bead. And all you're going to do after that is repeat 4 more times to create the first row of beads. So 1, 2, 3, 4, oops. 5. So we have got 6 bar beads per row. You're going to want to make sure to leave a nice long tail. I've got at least 6 inches here, but probably a little bit more, maybe double that. And I'm going to use a little bead stopper here so our beads stay put. And what we're going to do now is we're going to add 3 seed beads. We're at the end of our row, so we're going to add 3 seed beads for the edge. And then come back through the second stringing hole of the same bar bead, and that'll make like a nice little picot edge. So I'm going to pull, 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 and then you'll see, and it's a little squirrely because it's our first row. We don't have anything really formed yet, but that made a nice little picot edge there. For this next row, you're just going to be adding bar beads in between the bar beads in your first row. So your thread is coming out of that second stringing hole of that last bar bead in the last row. You're going to add a bar bead to your needle and then go through the second stringing hole of the next bar bead in the previous row. Oops. And this is going to be a little squirrely. Like I said, we don't have it formed up yet. So just a little squirrely, so just bear with me here. There we go. There, everything's in place now. We're going to add another bar bead, so I'm picking up a bar bead. I'm coming out of that second bar bead in the previous row. I'm going to go through the second stringing hole of the third bar bead in the previous row. It almost sounds like I'm saying Barbie when I say bar bead. Hi, bar bead. All right, we're going to pick up another one. And holding your work too might make this easier. You can hold it in your hand. Some people like to lay it flat on their work surface when they're working. Some people like to hold it totally personal preference, up to you. You can also add a stopper bead at the end of your thread if that bead stopper gets in your way. We have smaller bead stoppers too available that works better for seed beading. Got a couple more bar beads to go through here. Picking up another bar bead, going through that next bar bead in the previous row. And then this is our last one for this row. All right, we're in place to add our next row. To start this next row, we're going to pick up 3 seed beads for our edge. We're actually going to pick up another bar bead, the first bar bead for our next row. That's how you're going to start your next row here. So you're doing the picot edge and the first bar bead all together, and you're going to come through that second stringing hole in the last bar bead you added to the second row. So this will start our 3rd row. There we go. And then we're just going to do the same thing we did for the last row, where we add beads in between the bar beads. So I've picked up another bar bead. I'm going to come through that second stringing hole, if I can find it. There we go. Going to pick up another bar bead, come through that second stringing hole of the next bar bead in the previous row. So once you get going with this, it works up pretty fast. You just keep kind of doing this technique all the way down to the length of your bracelet. And to end this row, we're actually going to add a bar bead. And we're going to pick up 3 of our seed beads and come through that second stringing hole of the bar bead, and we're in place to start our next row. So you will notice on this edge you're coming through the same bar bead, and on this edge here, because this is kind of a staggered pattern, you're adding 3 and then adding a new bar bead. So if that bothers you, if that gap bothers you where the gaps are kind of not the same on each side, that's okay. What I did here on this piece, so I did a seed bead, a bicone, and a seed bead, and then I just added in a bead between my little picot edges to kind of even out that look. It's still staggered differently. The bicones are staggered differently, but I think it evens out the look a little bit. So that's an option once you're all done with both sides, going through with that extra seed bead to kind of connect all of your little picot edges. Just makes it a little more even looking. So I'm just going to continue adding bar beads and seed bead edges until my bracelet is the desired length. This is kind of a modified peyote stitch. I think the 2-hole beads make it a little bit easier, just weaving in and out of these beads back and forth, in and out, back and forth. So it works up pretty quickly, and it's a nice feeling weave too. The beads feel really kind of slinky and silky when you're working with them. So I'm just going to continue this until my bracelet is the desired length. And you'll want to just check and make sure, maybe check on your wrist if you're making this for yourself. And also always keep in mind the length that your clasp is going to add. So maybe you're making a bracelet and you're checking it on your wrist, but you're not taking into account how much length that your bracelet clasp is going to add. So maybe you calculated how big this bracelet is going to be end to end, and then when you put your clasp on, oh, all of a sudden it's too long. So always keep that in mind when you're stitching, that the clasp, if it's a bigger clasp, it can affect the length. And that's just something to be aware of and keep in mind. So I'm just going to repeat this little technique of 3 seed beads on the end, and then bar beads between each in the previous row until my bracelet is the perfect length. And this will work up fairly quickly because these bar beads, they're longer than seed beads, right? So the length is going to work up faster than if you were doing peyote stitch with little tiny seed beads, because these are nice substantial sized beads. That 2-hole design gives them some length. So if you want a quick weaving project, this is probably a good one to go for. And then we need to add one more bar bead to this side because this is the side where we're adding our 3 seed beads to the same bar bead. Oops, 2. There we go, 3. And then pull. All right, so I'm just going to continue that for a nice bracelet length. I wanted to show you how to finish a thread and add a new thread if you start to run out. We've progressed pretty far in my bracelet, but I still need to add a few rows so it's the length that I want, but I'm running out of thread. I only have about 6 inches left. So I'm going to finish off this thread by weaving it back into the bracelet. I just kind of follow the pattern, the weave pattern, and this will also kind of strengthen your design as well. So I'm just going to kind of like weave it back in, weave through these beads. Weave it back through here. And another thing too, these are 2-hole bar beads you're working with, so you can jump. I'm coming out of the second hole of this bar bead. I'm going to jump down here to kind of loop my thread, and that'll give it a nice security. So just weaving through the beads. You don't want to make your thread too visible, but making loops around and around will really secure your thread in place because you're kind of catching other threads in the weave. So when you cut this, it won't come undone. And my thread came off my needle, so I'll have to put it back on. I do that a lot where I get going fast with these weaves and I pull my thread and I pull a little too hard and the needle comes off of the thread. I'm sure that happens to everyone. Let's see, we're going to weave back through this one. It's just making loops within the thread path to secure my thread in place. And you do want to follow that thread path because you don't want to be able to see any jumping threads. That's a no-go. All right, and I can feel that this thread is starting to feel nice and secure. You can kind of feel it getting tight and secure in there. So I'm just going to go through a few more beads. Loop around. There we go. That feels really good. So I'm going to trim my thread there. And then to add a new one in, it's basically the same technique. You're going to weave your thread into the body and start in the middle so you don't have a tail coming out of the edge or anything. You're going to weave your thread into the body of the piece and then position it so it's coming out where you need to continue adding rows. So I'm going to do that right now. All right, so I'm just going to weave this thread into the body of this bracelet. So I'm going to just start somewhere in the middle of the bracelet. I'm going to weave it in. And you don't have to leave a super long tail here. We're going to trim that anyway after we loop around a bunch of times. So I'm going to weave through here. Just weave it into the body of the bracelet as we did for finishing the thread, and make sure you don't pull that tail through when it's still kind of loose, because that can happen. Pulling, pulling, pulling. circle around here. There we go. And you can see my tail thread is still able to be pulled through the body. That's how you know your thread isn't secure just yet. So I'm gonna weave a couple more times in place. Still moving, so let's keep going. There, that's getting better. Still able to move the tail, but it is getting more secure. I'm going to start working my way toward the rows that I need to continue adding, because weaving towards that will also strengthen this kind of loopy thing I'm doing. So once we get there, I think the tail won't be budging. So let's keep going. Oh yeah, it's getting really secure now. I can't move that tail anymore. So I'm just going to work my way over to where I need my needle to be to continue adding rows to my bracelet. And again, we're following the thread path. Another trick, if you're struggling to follow the thread path to where you need to be, sometimes it's tricky with these 2-hole beads. I'm coming out of that bar bead there. I want to be coming out of this hole from the opposite direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little knot here between the bar bead and the seed bead, and then I'm going to bring my needle through in the opposite way. So that kind of secures it and doesn't undo the weave. There we go. That worked perfectly. And now I can go through all these beads to get in position to continue adding rows. Perfect. All right, so we're going to add 3 seed beads here since we're coming out of this edge bead. 3 seed beads and a bar bead. Voila, now we're adding bar beads between the rows. And you can see my pile of bar beads has gotten very small. So for this pattern, you'll need 2 tubes of bar beads. I only used 1 for this piece because it's a thinner rose. I only used 3 bar beads for the outer rows. So it uses less bar beads when the bracelet is thinner, but for this thicker piece, the Autumn Dance piece, you'll need 2 tubes of bar beads. And now we're at the end of the row, so we're going to pick up a bar bead and 3 seed beads. And go through that second stringing hole of the bar bead we just added. Alright, so we successfully added new thread. We can continue our piece. Once your bracelet is the length you want to make sure that you end, your last row is one of the outer rows with 6 beads. So you can see these inner rows only have 5 beads, the outer rows have 6. So you want to end your bracelet on the outer row with 6 beads. And for your last row, you're just going to add a seed bead between each of the bar beads like you did for that first row. So I'm just taking a seed bead onto my thread and going to the next bar bead in the previous row, and that will finish up our bracelet here. And then we can kind of start adding the loops for our clasp once we add this final row. I really like the contrast of the turquoise and copper colors. That's kind of a fun mix here. And then last seed bead. There we go. Like I said earlier, you can leave the edges like this. I think that's pretty cute in itself. But if you wanted to add beads between these little picot edges, you could. You could add all seed beads. I do have these little 3mm fire polished that I think would be fun and kind of tie in with the gold of the clasp. So when you finish your last row, you're coming out of that bead. And what I just do is I take my fire polished bead or whatever bead you want to add, And then you just go through the 3 beads on the edge, the next 3 beads on this edge. And we just added thread, so we have a lot to work with here. Oh, that's kind of fun. So then once you're coming out of those 3 beads, I'm going to pick up another fire polished bead. And then I'm going to go through the next 3 seed beads and come through those beads from the bottom, so you're not messing up the orientation of the bead. Yeah, look at that. I like how what that adds to the piece. I like adding that bead in between. I just think it adds a little something. I think it adds a little more structure to the bracelet as well. So that's definitely an option. Again, you don't have to do this step, but it's kind of fun. Kind of just play around with what beads you want to add there. If you want to add a little more color, a little more shine, it's an option. So you just do that down the length of the bracelet and then weave over to the other edge and add them in between there. And it'll just kind of even out your edges, give a little more structure, give a little more flair. But again, you don't have to do this step. It's just a little fun. Yeah, that's looking good, and it's gonna really, yeah, bring in my clasp nicely. So that's a nice touch. Just something fun and extra. And it's a pretty easy step. And like I said, I had added that thread not too long ago. I only needed to add a few more rows. So I have plenty of thread here to work with. So why not? Why not add more beads? The more beads, the merrier. That's what we like to say. Yeah, so just keep doing that. We've got all our fire polished beads in on this edge. I'm going to bounce over to the other edge. I'm just going to add that extra fire polished bead there on the end so we don't have any bar beads naked on the ends, so to speak. And I'm just going to go through this last row. Go through these 3 seed beads here, and then start adding my fire polished beads to this edge, just like we did before. Through the next 3 after adding my fire polished bead. And there we go. Just continue that. We're going to go through the next ones. Picked up a fire polished bead, go through the next 3 all the way down, and then we'll be in position to start adding our clasp. So cute. So to add your clasp, I just went through all of these beads until I'm coming out of that center seed bead in the last row. I'm going to add 3 seed beads to my thread. And then I'm going to add the loop component of my toggle. And then 3 more seed beads. From here, I'm going to loop around through that other side of the center seed bead, and that's going to secure everything in place. And then I'm actually going to go through this little loop that I've made here several times just to make sure it's secure. This is the clasping point, so there's going to be some tugs when you're opening and closing your bracelet. You want to go through several times so you know that that clasp is nice and secure. It's not going to break the thread or anything. Come back through that. It's a little tricky. All the beads are so close. There we go. So I'm just going to go through that loop several times. Make sure I'm not catching any of these other beads. There we go. And you'll feel it start to get stronger when you go through more. And those seed beads make a nice little loop for the clasp to attach to. Make sure I'm going through there. There we go. And then looping back through. There we go. There we go. And then once you've gone through this loop several times, you can weave your thread back into the body of the piece as we did before when adding a new thread. Loop around, weave through several times to secure your thread, and then trim with your cutters. I'm just going to loop around here a couple times. And then we'll use that tail thread on the other end of our bracelet to add the bar component of the clasp. So we're just looping around, making sure our thread is nice and secure. And then trimming once it feels very secure. And this is a very tight spot, so I think that's a good spot to trim. All right, so we've attached one half of our clasp. We got to do the same on the other side. Now we're coming out of that same center seed bead. On the other end of our bracelet, we're going to add our bar component of the clasp in the same way. I'm going to make my seed bead loop here a little longer. That'll add some length to your bracelet. Bar components often need a little length too to fit in to the loop component. So my loop for this end is going to be about 15 beads long. So I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seed beads, and then my loop. There we go. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll do 14 so it's even. So you'll just want a longer loop. So based on how much length you need to finish your bracelet and how much length you need for the bar component to fit into the loop component, you can adjust that number as needed. And we are going to loop back through that center seed bead in the last row as we did before. And it's a little tricky to get in there. There we go. There, we've got a lovely little loop. And we will just reinforce that loop by going back through. There we go. And same thing as the other side. Once you've reinforced to your liking, you will weave the thread back into the body of the bracelet and trim. See, the more times we go through this loop, the better shape it is too. Not as loosey-goosey, squirrely beads everywhere, so that's nice as well. This is a really fun bracelet design. It comes together quickly. I've been doing this for about an hour and a half and I'm done. That's really good for a seed bead weaving design. That's a quick project, so really nice. My thread came off of my needle yet again. Getting a little too hasty. Go loop through all the seed beads and the component here. Back down. There, that feels like a nice strong loop. We can kind of start to weave back in to the bracelet. So I'm going to weave in here and start weaving my thread into the body of the bracelet, making those loops around and around to secure, and then we will trim. I really like the added 3mm fire polished beads I put in there. I think that adds a nice touch that ties in with the clasp nicely. Again, not necessary, but just a fun little extra touch. Ow, stabbed myself. There we go. All right, we've done that, and there we go. We have this lovely Autumn Dance Bracelet. Oh, that turned out so cute. So there you have it. That's how to make our Autumn Dance Bracelet. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. Make sure to leave a like and a comment. And again, you can find the Design Studio instructions for this and our original Autumn Dance Bracelet in the Design Studio at artbeads.com. I have links in the video description. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell for notifications so you're the first to know when videos like this are out. Thank you again so much, and I will see you next time. Bye.